Hi folks, welcome to this video. As you probably realized, the lip syncing isn't working very good. That's because when I created this video, I forgot to hit record on the sound button, so you get to see my pretty face there, but you don't get to hear me talking or what I said back then. However, I do remember what I said, and I'm going to go over this whole video and talk to you, still give you the commentary about how I paint this Fire Dragon Knight. This is me, so you get to see my studio. I'm just showing you my bookcase. I've got all my art books behind me, and I have a big studio where I can actually do all my work for clients, for film studios, comic book studios, and other publishers and video game companies. And I will be doing videos of myself, so you get to see me more, and we'll try and do some funny stuff in future videos. The goal is to post on YouTube at least 2 videos per month, and to also post maybe, if we get time, maybe 3 or 4. We want to get to about 4 videos a month, so a weekly video, and we'll have different stuff like painting and stuff. There's me with an ATST, sorry. And I'm just talking about what I've got in my studio. I've got all sorts of, I suppose, props and toys. I've got, dragon figurines, Star Wars figurines, things like that to keep me inspired. And what I'm talking about here is about the space, the environment that you're working in. Try and make your creative space really comfortable working. Make your desk really cool. I've got easy access to my magazines, so I can really flip through and I suppose find the art books that I want to help me paint better stuff. And I'm just showing off some stuff from Imagine Effects. And I've got art books. I have Magic the Gathering cards behind me on that shelf, as you can probably see. I have toys as well on the shelf behind me. I have pop vinyl pops. But the whole idea of this talk is to show you how I've created a creative space, a studio space that is comfortable, fun to work in. I have space for another artist and another assistant to work with me as well, and showing how I've made this a really, I suppose, place where I want to wake up every day and do painting and art. I'm just talking about the books that I have here. I have concept art books, I have books on anatomy, books on environment painting, all that sort of stuff. So it's really good to have a bunch of resources. If you're just starting out, I don't expect you to have all this sort of stuff, but I've been doing this for 5 years now. And so I've collected a whole bunch of resources, and usually people that work for me, I provide them, with resources and that as well. Sorry about that, just got the phone ringing in the background. And so here I'm just talking about the art studio. I'm going to pick up the camera now, and I'm going to show you what the studio looks like as well. So you can see me here, I'm going around slowly. There's posters in the background, cool film posters. There's a drawing, that's my drawing table over there. So I usually have, at the moment it's blank, it's just got gaming mats on there, but it has an easel. And that's my workstation, so I have a Wacom tablet with a computer. I will do a thing where I post photos later. I actually put photos up in a YouTube video of my studio space. I think a lot of people like that. That there is another desk for video processing, to create video editing, for the tutorial videos, and that's where my staff members work. As you can see, I have lots of colour on the walls, Star Wars posters, World of Warcraft posters, my own paintings, whatever really gets me motivated, and just stuff to make the space, fun and enjoyable to work in. And that's my 3rd screen, so I have 3 screens all linking up together. So there's a massive screen in the background where I can play process videos, have my art references, do all sorts of stuff. So I have a whole bunch of pictures up there, references. There's all my toy collection. So, like I said, just making the studio really comfortable. I even have my own artwork on the walls. You saw my pirate ship painting, Dangerous Seas, over in the corner. And I have my own paintings up. simply because it reminds me that I can do the work. You know, if there's days that I doubt myself or I think I've got a task that's too heavy or a tight deadline, I think to myself, hey, I painted this, let's do it again. So, you know, it's just a matter of, you know, having a space that makes you feel comfortable, makes you want to get up every day. I mean, I want to get up every day because I love what I do, but it's nothing like making a space that's comfortable for you. I would work for a studio. I'd go for an in-house position, but I'd still take some goodies to make the space comfortable. But in saying so, there's nothing like working from my own studio, working from my own home studio. If we ever expand, I really can't see myself setting up a business space as such because I find it too intrusive of my personal space. And art's such a personal thing. I really like the idea of having a home office. May have a studio outdoors, maybe. But at this point, you know, we only have a few artists that will help me out and work with me. So, you know, I'm quite happy with this home office setup, and I'm quite driven to do work every day. I try and get something done every day, so I'm not slacking off. There's me talking. I think I have to switch up the video of myself. So we're going into the video of what I'm painting today. This is a client job. It's a DragonKnight, and I'm going to go through the whole painting process of how it was for a client. It's for a client's comic book, and he wants one of my clients wants me to come up with different ideas and concepts for him. And I'm going to go and show you how I've gone from the pencil drawing, color, and then I'm going to finish off rendering it in front of you in the next hour. So that way you can have a look at how I create this work. You know. So I'll stop talking in a minute, hopefully. The video will come off of me. But it's quite funny that I wasted that time recording that video of myself and it didn't work. So sometimes when you're running this video on your own, you do have these glitches. When you can't hire people to do your video editing or your recording, you know, which I plan to do in the future, it does kind of get, you can make mistakes. So while I was, you know, painting this, I just forgot to hit record on my voice, but we have solved the problem now, so I've done a voice recording. Just showing you my rating tablet. I have an Intuos 5, for those of you that don't know, and I have like a I think it's an 18-inch screen, and it's a Samsung screen and a BenQ screen. So we're going into painting. So here is the pencil. It starts off. This is a pencil drawing I did. I didn't show you how I didn't record the video process of the pencil because for me, it took me a while to figure this out, and I had to go back and forth to the client and go, hey, do you like this DragonKnight? You know, is this dragon armor better? You know, and we changed it. Well, I changed it so many times until he was really happy with this, and we got the right pose. So this is a concept design, or I suppose a story beat concept design. I don't know what you want to call it, but I was going for a different style of this pencil work, and this is a very rough pencil. And it was a lot of lines were deleted because things were changed, you know, and I had to clean up things and make things very refined. As you can see, I'm still tidying up things before I go into painting the whole thing. And I'm going to pull up references. I'm pulling up actual references of armor and going in and loading that up so that way you guys and girls can see that I use reference, even though this is a very stylized piece of work. And, you know, I'm going through and painting this in I suppose, a comic book style. I still use further reference just to, I suppose, give me an idea or reference of what's going on. You know, it gives me a good reference of how things work, how lighting works on armor. Even, you know, it's really important to have reference, no matter what you're doing, even if you're doing stylized comic book work. You know, there's nothing beats that, you know. So I'm just taking a while to load the pictures, so I apologise for that. This content is been made for Patreons as well. It's due to Patreons that I'm able to make these videos. And if you want to see more videos, like we actually give away about minimum of 2 videos plus this video, which is 3 a month. and for starting at only $10. So even at $10, you'll get 2 videos then most months, and then at the $20 tier you get 3 videos. You get a full video with me talking and giving tutorials on how I paint. Those of you that don't know, I've been a concept artist and illustrator for 5 years. Prior to that, I was a fine artist and a graphic designer for about 7 or 8 years. So I really have a good knowledge of design. So that's why I'm both a concept designer and I'm an illustrator. I use both skill sets because I studied graphic design for so many years. I understand about good silhouette and how to make things graphically readable. And I've applied that in my illustration, but using my fine art skills, I'm still, asked to do book covers for companies and stuff like that as well. So there is a big difference between illustration and concept design. I'm often finding I have to educate some clients on this, but when this client wanted concept design, they came to me and said, I want concept design, and I said, well, concept design is a turnaround. And then he turned around and said, no, I actually want an action pose. And I go, well, that's actually illustration, But he kind of wanted, in the end, the client decided he wanted a mishmash of both. He wanted an action pose, but he still wanted to make the character readable so that you could see his design, see his dragon armor, what it looked like, what his sword looked like, all that sort of cool stuff. So I went through and made sure of that for him, in the design process, and made it clear, that he understood that. So it's really important you make sure your clients understand that. Sometimes clients, hear different things about what is concept art or what is illustration or what's comic books and all that sort of stuff, or how do you do comic book pages. And I've had so many cases where a client will say to me, I want comic book pages. But one case where they want a comic book page, and what they're really asking for is concept art. They're wanting these sequential pages, but really they're wanting everything designed as well. So it's up to you to make sure that you properly quote things, but you also educate the customers and you don't lose them. But sometimes you have to walk away from customers and say, well, this isn't concept design, this is illustration work, and it's going to take a lot more than what you're asking for or what you budgeted for. So you have to kind of give customers a compromise, or show them what they can get for their money. So here's the reference. What I'm doing is I'm pulling up armor reference and I'm coloring the armor reference, and I'm making sure that I color the armor red because the armor has to be red. So I'm seeing what happens. What is the lighting? How does the lighting work on red armor versus silver armor? Because this character has red armor, and it's got to be kind of metallic or shiny, as much as it can be for a comic book. So yeah, I'm actually playing with photos, like I said. I'm actually going in and going, okay, can we make it red? Can we make the armor red? And how can we use that as a reference to paint a knight that's got red armor? And like I said, I'm not copying the reference exactly. I'm using it as a guide. I'm using it to paint from it. So yeah, that's me just applying the first layer of color. I usually create more and more layers. As I'm creating the work, I build it up with layers, and I'm just pulling out the references and just building it up slowly but surely. takes time to just get that right. So what I usually do when I'm starting out, I have the pencil layer above, and then I have the color underneath, and I start rendering both. And then eventually what happens is I flatten and merge those two together, and then paint on top of that. So pencil above and multiply, a layer below to color. Then once the color starts to look really good with the pencil work together, I merge those two layers together, and then I start painting. I duplicate that layer on top, and I start painting on top and blending that merged layer. I start painting on top of it to get all the information, make it look correct. All up, this project, was budgeted for about a day's worth of work, or about 2 days worth of work. Actually, it was about a day, and it did take me that to get it all done. About a day's worth of artwork in the budget, and it was done. It took longer. It took a little bit more than a day, only because I had to go back and forth with the client with the color changes, with the design changes to make sure things were right. So that's one thing with concept design. If I'm doing concept design for myself, I can work things out really, really fast. And if you know what I mean, so I can really go in there and I suppose I know what I want in my head, so I've got no one to answer to. And it's the same with my comic book pages. I know what I'm doing. I can just go in there and start creating the pages. Whereas when I'm working with clients, it's a different process. It's not because clients are bad or they're doing anything wrong. It's just because you almost have to read the mind of a customer, and you have to really make sure your communication's down pat and you get exactly what the customer wants. And that's what good design is about serving a need and making sure you do what the customer wants. It's really important. There's a lot of designers that really, I wouldn't say there's a lot, but there's a lot of artists that just want to do their own thing, and that's fine. But when you're working with people, you need to factor in that they're going to have an aesthetic or a picture in their head of what they want. And unfortunately, the nature of the game is you are work for hire. You are there to be hired and do what people want you to do. And a lot of people find that daunting, and I suppose not horrifying, but they find that really annoying because they don't really want to be told what to do. But the reality is that's what concept design is about. You're designing for people. Unless you're designing your own thing, you really have to work with people. And there's so many times that I've worked with people and you bite the bullet and you basically do what people want. And it's not selling out. It's not doing anything. It's actually just called providing a service. However, it's important as a designer to also, if you see there's something wrong in a design and a customer's wanting something, it's really important to educate them as well and say to them, well, no, this is going to make your design look bad, or it's going to make it look good if you do this instead. And it's a way you've got to really word it the right way to not offend them and also make them see your point of view. And at the end of the day, it's just education. Even as a graphic designer, when I was a graphic designer, I did graphic design for about 8 years. I found in the corporate world, I had to educate customers the importance of graphic design and why the brand was important or why the imagery helped to sell their product. Some people didn't see it, but the people that did, they really valued what you did. Their brands and their products just became better. Anyway, here when I'm painting, I create a selection. You can see the ants around it. You can press Ctrl H and hide it. But I'm just showing you that I paint within the selection. I create a crisp selection for the character design when I'm doing character design. And I go in and I make sure that I'm painting within that layer. Because otherwise it gets messy. If you paint outside and then you want to change something, it's going to get harder to change it. So as you can see, I've got an overlay layer above the actual, I suppose, the first color stage. And what I'm doing in the overlay layer is I'm painting in lights and darks. I'm painting in black with black and white. I'm painting in the shadows and I'm painting in the highlights. You know, I'm creating depth, I'm creating, I suppose, contrast in the piece by doing that, and a lot of people forget how important that is when you're doing art. You know, it's important to really establish a lighting source, like the light source coming from the top left. And I'm looking at that photo over there of the red armor that I created, and using that as a guide to how I want the armor to look, roughly, you know. Remember, this is concept design for comic books. I'm not doing this as concept art for a video game or film. However, this could be concept design for a video game if the video game is an anime or a comic book style as well. So it's not hyper-realism. I'm not shooting for super photorealism. When I finished this and submitted it to the client, he was rapt. He loved it. He said, like, dude, this is way better than what he even expected. He was like, dude, awesome work. I hope you enjoyed it. And I did enjoy making this for him, actually. The DragonKnight, that's what it's called, I'm allowed to talk about it, is for a comic being made in South Australia. I can't say when it's going to be released or what it's about, only because I've signed NDAs, and also because I don't know when the next lot of art is coming out. The artist, the writer and client was extremely happy with this, so he'll probably hire me to do more stuff. Eventually I'll probably upload those videos and share that as well. And that's a good thing about freelancing. Sometimes you can get some you have the power to kind of to negotiate with your customers and clients. You know, I don't want to sell prints of this because I have my own prints in circulation of my own comic book I want to promote. But the great thing is the client was really happy for me to create a YouTube video and record my painting process and give it to my Patreons and my YouTube fans. And so that's the power of when you're working freelance versus working in a studio. You control the work to a degree. Yes, this character is controlled by my client. He owns this character design. It's his. However, you know, the creation of it is mine. You know, the creation of how I made it and the process videos and just the files, the PSDs, they're all mine as well. I own I suppose a copy. So here I'm just painting in the shadows. I'm adding a lot of darks in because I'm looking at that reference on the right, and I can see, you know, with a mechanical object, even in direct sunlight, there are dark shadows. There are really super dark shadows with armor, especially, you know, with industrial designs. So it's really important to remember that, like, you know, under the crevices of armor, there's going to be really dark shadows. And like, I think, honestly, if I wasn't looking at that photo, I probably would not have painted the shadows, because I would have been like, oh no, that can't happen with armor, you know. But I've been doing studies and studying armor for a while now, so I've got a good idea of how things work in this world. So there's also like a textured background in there that I created just with brushes. It's really important to have some texture with your, like, this is I suppose a character sheet you would call it in the industry. You know, it is on the verge of illustration, but it's really good to have texture in your work. A lot of people forget to put some texture in the background. They just leave it like a plain kind of color. And I think that kind of looks boring, you know. It's good to have some texture in your work because, you know, it shows that you really care about your design. It shows that you really want it to look interesting, you know, and you want it to sell. You want your concept designs to sell the idea of what you're doing. A lot of people forget that. They just have like white backgrounds and they don't do anything spectacular. I mean, it doesn't have to be totally spectacular, but it can be interesting, you know, just a textured brush in the background with different gradation of color or whatever. Nothing that's going to compete with your design, but really enhance your design and make it pop out more. A lot of people forget to do that. So all I'm doing, this whole video is me painting and detailing, adding in. I ended up I don't add any photos into it because I don't want to go for photorealism. I just add in textured brushes to create texture to the armor. I clean up all the edges, and all you can see here is I'm just painting everything, making sure all the details work. A lot of people forget, like, think that this part of the process isn't important. I think it really is. I think the polish and the details you put into the the initial concept design is really important, but the amount of detail you put at the end and refinement in your work really sells the idea. It really communicates to your customer, this is what it's about. This is what this person's armor looks like. This is how dramatic the lighting looks, or this is how the design. This is the materials of the object. So, it is important to detail this. The client was actually happy in the first color stage that you saw. The client was actually wrapped with that, and I was just like, dude, this isn't even half of what I can do, And it's always nice when the customers don't expect too much. It's quite relieving in a way sometimes, but I like to make sure that the artwork is pushed to the next level where I can. So here I've just, merged the layers again and duplicated them and put it on top of everything. And what I do is I keep on, duplicating the layer as I'm adding more and more to it. I add more and more layers above. I only do this simply to keep a copy of the previous version in case I need to change something or go back to it. So here I'm just playing around with the brushes. What I like to do is, when I'm cleaning up the picture or I'm painting at the end, I like to use a hard brush to create really crisp edges, a hard round brush, and I use a soft brush to create, your soft lost edges. So, just, it's really important to, don't worry too much about brushes. This whole thing I've only used one textured brush. That's all I've used, and the whole time I've used a hard brush or a soft brush from Photoshop. It's about understanding painting and knowledge of how things work, and doing a study of armor, I suppose. So as you can see, I'm building up the details, and just painting in, using a brush to kind of clean up. It's just cleaning up this whole illustration. You know, I'm trying to get rid of as much of the line work as possible, as you can see, and I'm just trying to clean it up to the point where, you know, you notice, you don't notice any line work, and I'm just trying to create depth in the painting. Yeah, honestly, this really didn't take much time, which is cool. And but you know, if I had done this on my own without client interaction, it would have been even faster. Yeah, so it's just a matter of going in with a brush and just cleaning up all the edges, really defining where the shadows are, crisping, making things as crisp as possible, getting rid of any line work, really creating contrast, you know, focusing on making that armor look shiny and creating enough contrast, so you're focusing on the character. Just cleaning up edges, making sure that the edges pop as well. This armor was a bit tricky because it had to have the yellow edging around the red. That made it like a bit more work for me. If it was just straight red armor, it would have been easier, I think. I'm just adding in more highlights there on the forearm and on the hand, making sure that the hand pops out. So going in with an eraser as well, and what I do is I clean up with an eraser, I go around the edges and make sure that, you know, because it's metal and because it's armor, I make sure things are crisp, things are cleaned up as much as possible. Otherwise it's going to look a bit funny. I'm just adding shadow under the cape, a bit of texture there with the textured brush. I actually use the mixer brush. I don't know if you've ever used the mixer brush before, but it allows you to blend in colour and you blend in surfaces as well, so they're more rendered. Or they're blended in and it looks dynamic. You can also use a smudge tool to blend things as well. You can use the mixer brush, the smudge tool, and that really, I suppose, creates, it blends the colours together so things look a lot more refined is the word. Not blended, it just refines things a little bit. But you want to make sure that it just doesn't look like the whole painting has had the smudge tool applied to it, or a blur tool. You want to still have those painterly qualities to the work. And here I'm just adding the line, so I'm actually adding a highlight to the sword case, making sure that there's a highlight there on the edge so that the sword case does pop out still. It's kind of getting lost there. So here I'm zooming in on the armor to look at how armor works and to try and mimic the texture of the armor. Armor does have like a texture, like I suppose a model texture to it. And what I'm doing is I'm actually just using the dual brush setting and finding a texture that does mimic that. What I do is I then paint with that textured brush. I paint it in overlay mode, and I paint it above the actual painting, and just to see if it works first. And I'm just trying to mimic how the texture of that armor works, and I think I get to the point where the brush does look really cool. My brushes are available through Patreon. You can't actually get them all and use them all. They're there for everybody. So what I do is I put it in a new layer, and I have it in the layer mode is in overlay, and I go in and you can see here on the forearm I'm actually painting it. I'm just testing it, and I'm playing around with that texture. I think I still play around with that brush. I really make sure that it looks like it's armor. You know, when I'm painting on that texture, that ever so slightly applying that texture, it looks like it's textured armor. You know, it looks like it's got highlights and grooves and dents, and it looks like it's got scratches and stuff on the armor. You know, and it's starting to work. It's starting to come to life now. It's starting to actually feel like armor. You know, and it's about mimicking it. It's not about painting it stroke for stroke. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's about mimicking that armored look as well with a textured brush. Again, I'm not going for hyper photorealism or a realistic fantasy illustration like Magic the Gathering. I'm going for a stylized comic book look, you know, or anime look. And you can see I'm still playing with that brush because I'm like, how can I get it? It's not quite right. You know, and that's the thing is with brushes, people go, oh, what brush do you use, you know, to get that effect? And look at that, it's starting to look really magic. That highlight's starting to really come in. It was going a bit strong, but I'm really pushing that in to make it feel like armor. Give it that glow to it, you know, that reflective, speaking to reflective surface. How do I create that reflective surface? And I do that with an overlay layer. So yeah, with that texture brush, I'm just going in and painting in the shadows again. I'm adding texture in the shadows in overlay mode. So I'm adding the shadows, I'm adding the highlights, and I'm just going in and really blending in and making sure it works. And having that photo reference right on the side there to look at, it really makes me work out, you know, I can actually gauge and say, yeah, it's starting to look like that. It's starting to actually feel like it's the armor on the side there, you know. And that's what I mean. I'm not copying the armor exactly, but I'm using it as a guide, as a reference to paint from it and to work out the texture of the armor. So just building up that the lighting and making sure that everything is textured to a degree. And in the end, I do a bit of a levels adjustment. I do a bit of a color balance on the piece. I make sure, you know, I'm adding in that texture ever so slightly. I don't want to add too much texture to the leg, the inside leg, because I don't want people to be drawn to that. I want people to be drawn to the I suppose the front arm and the front leg and the helmet. So I'm creating the most contrast there. adding the texture to the back leg, making it darker. The reason why I make the back leg darker is so that it contrasts with the foreground leg and feels like the character has got some depth to it. Here I'm just using a soft brush just to apply just to darken the bottom of the legs a little bit more. You know, we don't want people looking at the legs. It's not, that's not the focal point in this painting. We really want to make sure that people are focusing in on the character's head. And so we have to darken off the legs a little bit there. So for the rest of this painting, you'll see me detail it up, get it to a point where it's got a lot of detail and information, a lot of textures. All I've really done is I've used overlay. I'll just go over and explain what I've done to the painting. I've gone in and I've created overlay layers. I've used one textured brush, and I've used a layer for lighting in overlay mode. I've then used a layer I've used a soft light layer as well to create dark shadows, and I've also, merged everything together and painted on top and created copies of it to keep on rendering and detailing it up to a point where it's finished and refined. I've used a hard and a soft brush. So the hard brush to erase and to create crisp lines on the armor, and the soft brush to create the shadows and the depth and the three-dimensionality to the work. So when you're creating art, it's really important to, use a few techniques to build up your painting. Digital painting is about layering, and traditional painting you do a lot of layering as well. But the one thing with digital, you find that the benefit of digital is that you have the layers and you can build up things and you can make things look more dramatic, and you can change things. The reason why I've got so many copies there is I can go back if something doesn't work. I can flip back the old version and go, hey, look at this, this is better, and let's start again from here instead. That's about it. I think that covers everything. I mean, apart from me saying, hey, I'm putting a bit of texture here, a bit more texture there. I don't want to bore you, but I'll leave the video. I'll leave the content in the video, and you can see for yourself where I'm adding shadows, and you can see where I'm adding details to the work. And I'll let the video play for you to do that, and I'll have some music in the background as well. If you do like this video and you want to support the video, you can actually support it through Patreon. We have other videos. This is just one. This is just a very fast concept design. But I have videos on illustration, how to do fantasy illustration, how to do comic book art, how to do sequential art, how to do concept design, whether it's painted concept design and photo kit bash concept design. I cover a range of concept design techniques, and I also cover different range of illustration techniques. I have a few different styles. I do comic book covers for publishers. I do book covers for authors. I do concept design for games and films as well. I do a whole range of projects. I've worked on a whole range of projects, and have worked with Disney in the past and with Wolf Creek Productions on concept designs and map paintings. So, you know, you can actually subscribe to my comic book through Patreon. You can get all the videos on how I paint all this work. And sometimes I do include some client work if the clients allow me to. And we also have prints as well and original paintings available on Patreon. So thank you for listening in. I'll let you have a look at how I'm painting this, how I'm finishing off the detailing process. I hope this has been helpful to you. I will be posting videos, minimum 2 per month now. The goal is to go to 4 a month, but you know, with Patreon content, that does come first, so I need to make sure my Patreons are satisfied. But I'll do my best to post a range of videos on art and give tutorials and even maybe the business aspects. I'm hoping to also do a video on Comic-Con and Supernova, maybe have a video of my booth, and talk about the products and how I sell my products, general comic convention salesmanship, and give away some techniques, you know, teach people, or show you how I sell my work at Comic-Con, because my stuff does sell well at Comic-Con and Supernova. People do like it, my artwork. And so we'll go through, you know, how to set up a booth, how to present a booth so it looks professional and I suppose attractive to customers and make them stop and want to pick up artwork off your wall. So thank you very much. You know, spread my YouTube channel around if you do like this to other artists. The more views it helps. It doesn't cost anything as well to share it and to watch my videos. So spread it, the attention around, and also, like, again, if you want more content, I do interact a lot with my Patreons. I give people, you know, commentaries on Patreon. I help a lot on Patreon, and it only costs $1 to support the comic book and artwork that I'm making, and you get rewarded with it. So thank you very much for your time. I'll leave you with this. There's another half hour or so, 40 minutes or so of me painting and detailing this artwork up. And I'll stop blabbering because I kind of feel like I'm repeating things. But thank you for listening in. I appreciate you watching this. I will have more content for you. And have an awesome day. Catch ya. Bye-bye.